In the tradition of Malcolm X, peace be unto you. Today I want to talk about docility and the N word. You know, the famous N word. Close to 80% of American descendants of slaves have been maintained not only as the bottom social caste, but they have been made into a docile caste. They are docile in relation to institutionalized white supremacy in all of its ideological forms. If you are listening to this talk, though, you are not docile, but you are surrounded by docile people inside your home as well as throughout the general public. Since the time slaves lived out their lives on plantations, people of African descent have been generally a powerless group. We have been physically, psychologically, and emotionally powerless to overcome institutionalized white supremacy. The reasons are simple. White supremacist political and economic power grows out of the barrels of guns, very big guns. You want proof? The proof of the pudding is in the taste. Just look at our present social and economic situation. The reasons for our powerlessness are systemic. A constant barrage of benign, dehumanizing imagery or stereotypes publicized through written literature and verbalized through the radio, television, cinema, and music industries have made American descendants of slaves docile. Now here I think I should be more precise about exactly what I mean by docility. Docility is a passive reaction to a perceived threat or destructive stimuli. It is an unconscious failure to defend one's inner self and or one's physical well-being because of fear. Or put another way, it is overwhelming unconscious paranoia. It is when your mind plays tricks on you because you have lost your mind. I don't mean that a person is paralyzed by a physical injury. What I mean is that you can't move to overcome that which is an obvious threat to your health, your safety, or well-being in the face of an obvious threat because you have been made to be passive and dependent. American descendants of slaves who are docile, and there are millions of them, do react emotionally and physically, but they react passively, aggressively. Their responses are misdirected away from the actual threat. Their responses to the actual causes of their pain are turned upside down and inside out. Instead of a direct response to a perceived threat, they instead passively, aggressively hurt themselves, their family members, or other American descendants of slaves with whom they associate. For example, the word nigger is a weaponized word which expresses frustration, anger, and hate. It always has done so. It is used by docile American descendants of slaves who can't strike out at the actual cause of their inner pain. It is like vomit spewed onto other people who mirror back to the user their own hated physical characteristics. People who use it may rationalize their use of that word. For them, any excuse will do to mask their docility from themselves. Their excuses will go to the extreme of absurdity, as when they say the N word is a term of endearment, when in reality, its use is simply passive hostility. Its use is a mask for self-hatred, just as one who bleaches their skin. More accurately, it is in reality passive, aggressive self-mutilation. Its sole purpose is to hurt the targeted victim or targeted group, or even oneself, sometimes to set the stage to rationalize murder. As a psychological weapon, white supremacists and their mass media use it around the clock, both directly and indirectly, through well-designed imagery. Their debasing imagery is thrown onto your consciousness like dog doo-doo in your face. They use their arsenal of imagery very aggressively as a weapon of mass mental manipulation. White supremacists know it is an ancient method, used for thousands and thousands of years, beginning in India. It has always been used to control how bottom caste members perceive themselves and hate each other. Let there be no doubt that the use of the N-word is a form of passive-aggressive behavior. When spoken, one is screaming out to the world and reinforcing in the user, him or herself, that that person thinks lowly of him or herself. When being used, it is as though one is watching someone commit self-mutilation in real time and in slow motion. They are shouting out, "I hate myself, so I hate you too, because you remind me of how ugly I perceive my African characteristics to be." Though there are many forms and degrees of self-hatred, in all cases, passive-aggressive behavior is symptomatic of very deeply rooted self-hatred. People with that kind of self-hatred are dangerous to themselves as well as to others. Now, over the course of a lifetime and generations, it is nearly impossible to uproot it while confined in mental slave quarters. So, we shouldn't be surprised that we don't have political power nor wealth in the United States. If we did, we'd give it away, given our docility. So we probably will never have wealth and never have political power on a general scale. Nor should we be delusional about having political power, nor the means to get it. And there are reasons for that. There's a strong correlation between political power and wealth, as everyone should know. Descendants of slaves have virtually no wealth and consequently no ideological nor structural political power. White supremacist elite have most of the wealth. We know that. They have most of the wealth in the world now. They have impoverished the greatest, oldest cultures in the world. And they have all the political power in the United States. Now, if you don't believe that, just see for yourself white supremacists in the United States, Israel, and Europe sadistically enjoying the economic strangulation of babies, women, and the elderly in Venezuela, Palestine, Iran, Zimbabwe. You see, political power is a concentration of both legislative and police force. It is either active or passive. Active political power is sanctioned by law and government officials who are vested by legislative power in a vast justice system, or should I say, injustice system. It executes its power forcibly through its police force. Political power can also be passive-aggressive when it is expressed through oppositional public protests. But such informal actions or movements, though constitutionally sanctioned by the state, cannot lawfully exercise police power. You can't enforce anything. Instead, such movements exercise passive-aggressive force. They block doors, they block streets, and maybe runways with their bodies. They take a beating to bring about political change. Strange, isn't it? Absurd, isn't it? Sometimes such movements claim to be passive resistance movements. But since World War I, those kinds of movements have never stopped the federal government from going to war. Not one time. Passive resistance has never been able to stop the slaughter of billions of human beings over the past 100 years. And the slaughter goes on to this very day, everywhere. The fact is that white supremacists claim a monopoly on police power. As you well know, they use it. They give beatings. They give beatings to preserve their power. They enjoy beating their opponents. Sometimes they enjoy beating their opponents to death. White supremacist political power is simultaneously concentrated and active. A measurement of its amount of power is its ever-diminishing or increasing activity to gather resources in the form of revenue like taxes and fees, and to formulate and execute laws and policies that rationalize its international actions as being in its national interest. And let's not forget, they control the money supply, the currency. Their interests are exclusive of all others' interests, whether they be its citizens or foreigners. Whatever white supremacists do, they do for their own sake. They act for their own benefit to selfishly satisfy their own appetites. They have no shame in being red in tooth and claw. They are never at rest. They are insecure by nature. They are paranoid. They are nomadic because they are ravenous. Nothing to them is sacred. They have bloodlust. They can only be contained by not being fed, by being starved to death, or by a greater elite power which offensively aims to consume them and to become the new beast on the field. I am Dr. Stephen Nur Ahmed. Peace be unto you.
I really enjoyed this video, and I hope you did as well. If you enjoyed Stephen's talk, please support this channel, thumbs up, and share this video. And please do not forget to subscribe.